In today's podcast, we're going to talk about, should you make your kids apologize? I know this is a discussion that happens in a lot of families, and I know it just annoys a lot of parents when their kids don't apologize sincerely. So we're going to talk about how to approach that differently with your kids to really help them take responsibility for their actions and resolve conflict in the family.
Welcome to the Art of Raising Humans.
Hello, and welcome to episode 29 of The Art of Raising Humans. I'm Kyle.
And I'm Sara.
And it has been a busy April, hasn't it?
Yes. It's been crazy busy.
And I bet a lot of our listeners are going through what we've gone through this past April, a lot of school stuff wrapping up. Easter was part of it. We had a great Easter, right? Mm-hmm. Our youngest turned 6, so she had a birthday, which is fantastic.
Other birthdays, too.
Other family celebrations going on. So I'm sure most of you can relate to April just being really busy. I mean, even though we homeschool our kids, so we don't typically follow the regular, we're not confined by the regular school schedule, but April seems to do that to us, because there's still kind of a wrapping up of what you're doing. There's other kind of testing things going on, and a lot of projects are done. So, well, we're stepping into May. I know summer's coming. A lot of families have a lot of vacation plans happening. So I hope every one of you are kind of excited about what's upcoming. I hope you've got some really fun ways of connecting with your kids coming up. And in this podcast in particular, we want to talk about an opportunity that's going to come up a lot over the summer when your kids are playing with each other. There's going to be conflict, right?
Right. Yes.
When kids have free time.
It's natural. When people are together, there's conflict.
There's conflict. And so people are going to hurt each other's feelings. Mm-hmm. They're going to say and do things that people get upset about. And so in this episode in particular, we wanted to tackle something that I see a lot, and I know you do too, Sara, when it comes to family is, should we make our kids apologize? A real common thing is lots of families have this value that it's important to apologize after you hurt somebody. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, right. And that is a skill to learn. I fully agree. How do you apologize? How do you make things right when you've messed up? Because we're going to mess up. And so we want to teach our kids what to do next. You mess up, it's human. We all do it. Now what? If
you break something, try to repair it. So I felt, Sara, when I was thinking about the topics for these podcasts, since we just kind of tackled the last 2 episodes, one was about consequences. And I know a lot of parents who probably heard that were like, what? What do I do then? If and I hope we didn't go totally into depth, but I hope we explained well that there are consequences to giving consequences. So when you give consequence, and we also talked in the last one just before this about having structures and rituals that you have in your family. Okay. So I thought this kind of piggybacked that well, because I think what I see a lot with families is one of the consequences of giving punishment and consequences is kids necessarily don't want to take responsibility for the things that they've done, because to take responsibility typically means I'm going to get a consequence, And so there's this hesitation to do that, which seems to undermine what we just said. Lots of parents want and value kids taking responsibility for what they've done. And one of those rituals that families want them to do is to say you're sorry. Right?
Yeah. You're kind of saying you have to create the environment. These things can help create an environment that invites kids to take responsibility. I messed up. This is what happened. And then knowing that you're going to come alongside them and figuring out what to do next versus just here. Great, you told me, now here's the punishment.
Yeah. Well, I like what you just said. Instead of I messed up, with consequence, like you messed up, and here's what we're going to do to you about that.
Yeah.
Instead, what we're wanting to do, why we think apologies are important. We think forgiveness is key in relationships to be healthy and strong and intimate, close and vulnerable with each other. We think those are important. But if the kid is afraid of the punishment and the consequences that are going to come when they mess up, which kids are going to do, then they're less likely to want to own that and say they're sorry.
As we are too, right?
Yes.
Good point. If you're at work or in your relationship with your significant other and you mess up, you kind of think in your head, how are they going to respond?
Yeah.
And if that boss or that, your friend, whoever, that person's going to receive it, you're going to be able to talk about it, you're going to be able to make it right. Yeah. You're much more likely to own it and go fix that damage
Yeah.
you've done
Yeah.
versus my boss is going to yell at me, they're going to come down on me,
Yeah.
or your friend, whatever's going to happen. You know that as a grown up.
Yeah.
And so how much more for children that experience is going to be like this person who's so powerful in my
Yeah.
life, who I want to be happy with me.
I want them to like me. I want them to
Yes.
think I'm a good kid.
Children
I want them, yeah.
that, even if they don't seem like they
Yes,
do.
they do.
They do.
Yeah.
You're so important to them, and
Yeah.
they want you to be happy with them and to see them well.
Mm-hmm.
And so we can help create that environment for
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. I was thinking too, as you said that, as adults, if we think we're going to get blamed or someone's going to point the finger or we're going to be unjustly accused of something,
Yeah.
well, we're less apt to own up to it. We're more likely to try to diminish it, justify it, make excuses for it. I hear a lot of parents say that they don't want the kid to make excuses for what they've done. And we agree. We want them. I don't mind an explanation for what they've done, but inevitably, I want conflict to be an opportunity within the family that leads to more intimacy, more closeness, more vulnerability. But when there's consequences and punishment used every time there's a conflict or some kind of somebody hurts somebody or gets upset, it typically leads to isolation. So in this podcast, when we're talking about apologies, we're doing it as a way to create more intimacy among the siblings, within the family, instead of the isolation, which in a lot of cases, when kids are quote unquote made to say they're sorry, I don't know if this happened to you, Sarah. I know it happened to me several times, or I saw friends who did it. It was that constant power struggle of like, say you're sorry, and then the kid would say, "I'm sorry." Like, you didn't mean it. No, I did mean it. No, it didn't look like you meant it. And there's this back and forth about, now how do I fake that I meant it even though I didn't? How do I say it? Like you said, I want the parent to get off my back and be fine with me again. So the kid almost learns to fake sincerity, which isn't gonna be helpful. That's not good. I don't want my kids faking sincerity. I want them to sincerely own the consequences of what happened, which is they hurt their brother or sister, or they did something that caused some damage in the relationship between their parents and them. And I think faking the sincerity doesn't help them do that.
I think a lot of times too, we jump to the I'm sorry before we've kind of delved into it a little bit. So if this child hits that child, for example, punches them in the stomach or something, there's probably a reason for that.
Yeah.
And so we jump to I'm sorry as if that's going to fix all of that background information.
Yeah.
And it doesn't.
Yeah.
We know it doesn't, but we think, oh, let's just...
It's like putting a Band-Aid on it.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and if that person is still mad, they probably punched them because they were mad about something.
Yeah.
And so they just jump to, I'm sorry. They can say, I'm sorry. And they're not even in a space to be sorry.
Yeah. So,
They're still angry
Yeah.
about whatever happened.
Yeah.
And they might even feel justified in what they do. So if you don't dive into that stuff, then the sorry really isn't accomplishing your goal.
So what you're saying, if they don't understand what initially caused the upset, that then led to the behavior, right? And if you just say I'm sorry, it kind of skirts all that.
Right. So we want to pull back and pause for a second and get into that. You kind of hit upon it when you said you want to hear an explanation.
Yeah.
Not excuses, that's different, but an explanation. Yeah, I do. I want to hear what led to this.
Yeah.
What led to you hitting your brother? There was something there that happened, so tell me that story. And I need to get them to a calm place, right?
Yeah.
We need to resolve that in them. We need them to regulate again, get into the right part of their brain so that they can then move to the next step. So I need to hear that, and I need to help them regulate unless they're able to do that on their own. But a lot of times kids, they're going to need us to come alongside. They need to borrow our calmness.
Even up
they
into
need to
teenage
borrow
years.
our regulation. It's teenage years for sure, because you almost have even more going on sometimes than you do when you're 8 or 9. So they need us to come alongside, borrow that kind of calm from us so they can get regulated, and then they can look at the problem differently than when they're all upset.
What you're suggesting, a key component of an apology done well is reflection. You'd like them to reflect upon what brought you there, and to kind of understand that better. So then you actually know yourself better, but then also know what you're apologizing for, right? Is that you felt this way, and then you took that action to express that feeling. And so let's apologize for that action, but let's go back and figure out how to do that differently next time, right? So that's really where the learning happens.
Yeah.
And I think a key part of that is forgiveness, right? So if you could add that, and then I want to go through some of the specific steps that we take with our kids, but is forgiveness important? So like, is it okay just to say, I'm sorry, and then someone says, it's okay? Yeah, and then they just, okay, they're done.
Right.
What would you add to that?
Right. So you're saying the apology can be half-hearted and really not meant, but so can the forgiveness.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So the other
Yeah,
kid
yeah.
can be, I know I'm supposed to say I forgive you, even
Yeah.
though I don't really forgive you.
Exactly, yeah.
Things between us
Yeah.
are not okay, and this is probably going to happen
Exactly,
again.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
So-
I don't want to be in trouble now for not forgiving you. But many times, Sarah, I'd say even adults do this. The kid apologizes and say, it's okay. And they'll say that they don't even think
Yeah.
to say forgiveness. So
Yeah, I forgive you is
yeah.
different than it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, when kids say that, when I would hear a kid say that, let's say I raised my voice at one of the kids, and then I said, I apologize to him, and they said, it's okay. Then what am I doing this for? If it was
Right,
okay.
it's not
I
actually
don't need to-
okay.
yeah, I actually will strongly say that. When I was a school counselor, I'd say to the kids all the time, then why did you come to my office so upset? If this was all okay, then what are we here for? Okay. So saying it's okay is also, you're missing the step I would like you to do, which is for you to forgive the person. You know,
Yeah.
they've apologized. They've said that that's not the best way to do it. They wish they would have done it differently. Can you accept that, or are you going to hold that against them? You know,
Yeah.
So
Because they
yeah.
have some work to do
Yes,
too. The other
I
side
think
of the
so.
apology
100%.
is, again, helping them regulate,
Yes.
helping them look at what happened in this situation.
Yeah.
Because
and not have resentment. Yeah.
Yes, true repair in the relationship is the forgiveness, and the forgiveness is part of it. The apology and the forgiveness. That's what's going to bring a relationship back. Because if my best friend hurts my feelings and I say, "Oh, that's okay,"
Yeah.
I'm still got something there.
Yeah.
I haven't resolved that truly.
Yeah.
So we might need to have a conversation and really resolve that.
And as you're talking, you know what I'm thinking, Sarah? This is one of those rituals that is old school. You know, let's get the kids together. Let's have them say, I'm sorry for doing X, Y, and Z. They'll say, I forgive you. That's kind of an old school thing.
Now
But
give each other a hug.
yes, but
And they're still seething inside.
so it's kind of old school ritual with a new school spin on it. You know?
Yeah.
I actually think all of those steps are important and vital.
Right.
I just want each of the kids to be regulated and really understand what is the point of this ritual, you know? And I want the adults who are doing the ritual with the kid to understand there might need to be some coaching here. But also that the key goal here is the conflict brings about intimacy rather than isolation, and that everybody understands that this is how we repair broken things, you know, that these are the consequences. The consequences of hurting somebody is coming back to them to repair the thing you broke. And inevitably, the forgiveness is actually part of the ritual that sets us free to then be able to move closer towards each other rather than continually holding our mistakes against each other, you know?
Right. And just building that up, and it builds and builds and builds. And I think, honestly, there's this. We've learned more about relationships and how to have successful ones in the workplace and with our friends in our lives, with intimate relationships. And so I think this is just bringing that up to, let's take this to the children too. I think I've been through some work trainings, probably other people have,
Yeah,
some
sure.
team building
Yep.
that addresses some of this stuff.
Yeah.
So I think it's out there.
Yes.
And just
So good. You're right.
let's talk
Yeah.
it. Let's
Yeah.
talk about it with children. What does this
Yeah.
look like in a family between siblings?
So what you're saying, that's true. I didn't even think of that. Just in the business world or in like work dynamics, is these kind of steps are similar, and maybe not in the same wording, but very similar. The same idea.
Yeah, and I see it in there. It's getting out there, and maybe not every business,
Yes.
but if you've been in
healthy
part of a
business,
corporation or
are trying to
something,
make healthy cultures. Yeah,
they're bringing in
So
people
good.
to
That's
teach
true.
this stuff
Yeah.
in the workplace.
And so if you're wanting a healthy culture at work, you're going to have some similar steps of people needing to come back together, use that conflict to then bring about more intimate, closer relationships within the workplace.
Yeah.
And it's going to make a healthier culture if everybody can own what they've done and then ask for forgiveness for those things that have happened, right? And then for the other coworker, nobody in the situation is just going through the motions. We're all trying to actually own our part within the conflict.
yeah, come to the table.
Yeah.
And true resolution.
True resolution. Yes. So something that you pointed out before we began the podcast was something that we kind of listen for, our ears are listening for, is even in our family with our kids, even though we emphasize this, at times there's a misunderstanding. At times we will hear one of the kids get upset and demand an apology from the other kid, right?
Right.
Or at times we'll hear a half-hearted apology, just I'm sorry, and then let's get this done with,
Yes.
and then that is a like little beep 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 to us. My beeping sounded weird, but that's a little like blinking light. There's a misunderstanding of why we're doing this, right?
Yeah.
Is that kind of what you listen
Yeah,
for?
kids will definitely like, oh, I know where this is going. Sorry, just so they can bypass the uncomfortable conversation.
Especially if they see us coming. Right? Okay, mom and dad are going to come coach us through this.
Right.
Like,
So we feel that way too,
yes,
right? We're like, oh no.
Oh, God.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
I messed
Sorry,
up.
done. Yeah,
God,
mom, dad,
I don't
we got
get
it.
into this,
Yeah.
right?
That's right. And so if we hear that, we're like, oh, we need to come back at some point to get better connection. Maybe, this is after we follow up. If we can do it in the moment, great. But maybe we need to follow up and clarify with that kid the misunderstanding that's happening. That we're not trying to make them do anything. This goes back to the wording podcast. I'm not trying to make you apologize. I'm not trying to get you to apologize. I'm inviting you into something that is healthier and is actually going to resolve the conflict that just happened. And you're actually going to like the outcome if you're able to participate in that invitation.
Yeah, so along that, we actually would not make a child apologize. If the child doesn't get to that place, I'm not going to keep dragging them along.
Yeah.
I'm not going to force it.
Yeah.
But I do think if I look at that and that kid's just like, no, I'm not going to say sorry for that, then I think, okay, you're not there yet.
No, not there
you're not
yet.
regulated enough, or this isn't the moment. We need to keep repairing you, helping you regulate.
Yep.
And trust the process.
Yep.
Sometimes you think, oh my goodness, my child is not going to apologize.
Yeah.
It's going to be okay.
Yep.
Because my goal is to get my child to that space.
Yep.
But I've got to journey with them longer. We're not there yet.
Yeah.
And trying to skip that, in the end, they haven't learned anything.
No, I agree. Yeah. No.
So
it's just going to start a power struggle.
I might pat myself in the back. My kid said sorry, but if they don't mean it and they're not in that space, then what have I really accomplished?
Or just teaches them unhealthy habits.
Yeah,
Of like, let's just get this done. Yeah. and so I think it's really important to point that out, that it is something we always follow up with, right? So it isn't, if the kid continued to refute, which our kids have done that, right? They've not been in space. It tells me they're not in the prefrontal cortex. If they are in the prefrontal cortex, I don't think they have resistance to taking responsibility for what they've done and trying to improve that thing they did and do it differently. But if they are resisting it, it's typically going to be a misunderstanding of what we're asking them to do, or two, they're just not in a good space. So remember, connection leads to cooperation. So I'm going to later on follow up. You and I would talk and intentionally follow up with that kid to invite them into it. Now, another thing we've done, especially with littler kids who are resistant, and they seem like they're in a good place, but I still want to show them what I mean by it, just to clarify what it looks like, because they think, lots of kids I see and at the private practice, lots of kids are afraid to, because they think the other kid's going to get really upset at them, or they definitely think saying I'm sorry is going to turn into this long lecture, or this it's not going to be a positive experience. So what I will do if I'm trying to change those dynamics within the home is I want to model for the kids. So I say, listen, in the past, maybe you've done that and you've said you're sorry and you didn't mean it, or we got upset at you and it didn't turn out well. Let me show you what I mean by this. Come over here. I want to model it for you real quick. And I might even coach the kid who we're doing it with before I do this, but I'll just come up and I'll say, here, I'll apologize for you. Okay. Now I'm not going to do that forever, but I'm just doing it almost like loaning him my prefrontal cortex. I'm going to let the kid borrow my ability to take responsibility for the actions and reach across the table and say, will you forgive me for what I did? And so I'll even phrase it in that sense. I won't say for what he did. I might say for what I did, or what the part we played in that. And then the kid can look at me or the other kid and say they forgive him. And the kid can see how that feels.
Yeah. And again, I think it is important to reiterate, this would be after everyone's calmed back down, after everyone's in a good space. So I'm going to go to the child that was hurt, and I'm going to first regulate them, but not a sort of like, oh, I hate you, child who messed up, kind of thing. I'm not giving them a dirty look.
Yes, yeah.
I'm saying, I'm going to go take care of so-and-so.
Yeah, the one who's hurt.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm going to make sure they're okay.
Yep.
I'm going to be with them. But I'm going to also, with that same gentleness, go to the person who's upset.
Yeah.
and I'm going to help them regulate.
yeah.
And I want to hear their story
Yeah.
and how they got there. Because
Yeah.
my goal is to help them get back to that
Yep.
prefrontal cortex. And then if they're still not ready, if, like you said, the younger ones,
Yeah.
then I would apologize for them.
Yeah.
I would say, you knocked over my blocks and ruined my building I'd worked really hard on.
Yeah.
And
you messed up my Minecraft game and erased all that
Yeah,
stuff I
yeah,
worked
yeah,
on,
yeah.
right? And as you're saying it, the first thought I was thinking, listeners are probably going, that's going to take a lot of time, you know?
Yeah.
It's going to take a lot of time to do this, and I don't have all that time. And I guess my challenge to that would be not doing it takes a lot more time. So everybody kind of faking that they're sorry, everybody just giving lip service, being insincere throughout this. I think that takes more time because it creates more conflict. What we're trying to teach the kids through this ritual of apologizing and forgiving, we're teaching them how to resolve conflict in healthier ways, thereby making it less likely I need to coach them in the future. You know,
right.
they
They're
will
gonna
learn
the skill
Yeah.
and be able to do the skill on their own.
Yep.
Not always, right?
Yep.
There's going to be
Sure.
lots of times they still need your
Course.
support
Yeah,
because
yeah,
that's
yeah.
what we're there for. But you'll start to see these little times where, oh, they took care of that on their own.
Yeah.
And
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you'll go, wow, all that legwork up at the front has been worth it. But then I'm thinking about, Sarah, how many marriages can't seem to do this, right? Who
Yeah.
couples don't know how to look each other in the eye and sincerely say, I'm sorry for how I spoke to you the other day.
Yeah.
I'm saying that because I've probably said that a lot of times to you. And even in that, I think you said, to the marriage point is, how many couples can't seem to be like use conflict in a way where they apologize, where they forgive one another, and to where that conflict's really resolved and they move towards each other. I think that's important to note. That's what we're trying to raise our kids to have those. But also in that, I think you said something too that Abby said to me early on, is I was pretty good about doing this with Abby, apologizing, asking forgiveness. And you mentioned to me a big part of apologizing too is also this idea of repenting. Like I'm kind of repenting for what I've done. And part of the word repentance is turning away from, like, doing something different next time. So a big thing we're wanting our kids to eventually get to, and even as adults, I want to get to as a dad, is I know I kept saying to Abby, I'm sorry, I yelled at you the other day. I'm sorry. And Abby would say, Dad, I'm glad you come to me and you own it. I just wish you would change it. And so we also want to put that out there, that that's the goal in all of this too, is the ritual is, the kid is coming and saying, I'm sorry for whatever they did, right? This is kind of how we do it. People can be creative however they do it, but this is just the format we like to do it to get to the goal that we're trying to get to. I'm sorry for what I did. Will you forgive me? And I like that wording step by step. And then the kid who's been hurt to say, yes, I will forgive you. And then we don't tell them to hug, but that would be great if they want to. I'd say if you want to hug, you want to high five, some kind of connection after that. And you really want to see them willing to do that because that's part of the intimacy that they're moving towards.
Right. And if they're in a good space, then they'll be okay with that.
Yeah.
If they're not, if they don't want to high five, they're just still kind of turning the cold shoulder,
Yeah.
then we're not really there yet, and they are still faking it. And I think it's important to mention that the words, I'm sorry and all that is great, but we are actually open to other forms of repair, and I think that's important to mention. So.
Yeah.
So, for example, a child might like to draw a picture as an apology.
Yeah. Good. Yeah.
Or if they've messed up something, they might say, oh, I broke your building. Can I help you rebuild it?
Yeah.
That might be repair.
Yeah.
Repair could be going get an ice pack for your knee
Yeah.
because I shoved
that's
you down,
good.
you scraped your knee.
Yeah.
So repair
Love
can
that, Sarah,
look
yeah.
different ways. And I love that because a quick sorry is
Yeah.
kind of easy to give.
Exactly. Yeah.
But true repair would
Yeah.
be, like you said, you're turning away. I'm going to do something. I'm going to help
Yeah.
build this relationship back up.
Yeah.
And getting you a cold pack or helping you build your building or, I messed up your room. I'm going to help you clean up your room.
Yeah.
Those kinds of things are the repair that I think is really valuable
It's great.
versus
I agree
just
with you.
an
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So good. So I hope this helps clarify that. So many parents, I think, are trying to figure this out because I think it is such an important piece of helping your kids learn the skill of conflict resolution with, oh my goodness, we need that in the world. We need some kids to grow up as adults who aren't scared of conflict, who don't run from it, but know how to resolve it, how to use conflict as a tool to really understand themselves better and others better. And I think the ritual of apologizing and forgiving one another is a key component that we use in our family to do that. So we'd love for your feedback. Love to hear maybe some ways you do it a little differently. With any kind of comments you want to give us on any kind of place you're listening to on the different platforms you're listening to this podcast. We'd love for you to share this because families, I think, really would need help in this area. So we'd love for you to share it. Definitely visit us at parentinglegacy.com. You can see more of our content there. And we've got some exciting things planned for May. So I think in the near future, we're looking at much more content like this, but also may start including some interviews with parents and changes how they moved from like fear-based punishment, consequences type stuff onto a different type of approach of parenting that was much more discipleship oriented and kind of inviting the kids into learning and growing instead of just demanding behavior and stuff like that. So it was really loved doing this podcast today. I hope it really helps you.
Thanks for listening.
Have a great day. The Art of Raising Humans podcast should not be considered or used as counseling, but for educational purposes only.